지금 이 시간은 닥터 다니엘 피셔박사님의 미국 당사자운동의 역사적 전개와 과제라는 제목으로 강의를 듣겠습니다. 다니엘 피셔박사님은 당사자이시며 스스로 정치가 교사시고요. 미국 내셔널 인포머먼트 센터 CEO이시고 공동 설립자이십니다. 그리고 유니버시티 오브 매사추세츠 메디컬 스쿨의 패컬티 멤버이기도 합니다. 다니엘 피셔박사님은 큰 박수로 맞이해주시겠습니다.
Good afternoon. Yesterday I spoke with mostly peers. I'm glad today to see some of the peers back. And some of the material that I cover today will be similar to yesterday and some will be different. The one part that will be similar will be, I'll talk a bit about my own recovery experience, because I think it's important that people realize that recovery is real. What do we mean by recovery? That's an important question. And I'd like to begin actually, as Professor G had said, I do not believe these are primarily medical conditions. These are conditions of the mind, body, and the soul. All three, all parts. But in some ways, especially conditions of our soul. And psychiatry, unfortunately, neglects that area and is focused almost exclusively on the body, especially on the brain. Naturally, we need our brain. I wouldn't be speaking if I didn't have a brain. But I think of our brain more like a switchboard. It doesn't really know what to say without a self and without a soul. And these are influenced very heavily by our family and by our school and by our job. So we are not just individual brains floating around that function or dysfunction. We're human beings. We're human beings. And we're trying to be human beings. I went through my own experience of temporarily losing my humanity. Loss of humanity, loss of soul was what occurred to me. And partly, maybe primarily, because I became myself convinced that we were just machines, that we were a set of chemicals, and that if we just adjusted the chemistry, that we would be happy because we had the right chemicals. I was young and I was naive. I was 21 when I came to this conclusion. It's a mistake to entrust such important conclusions to such a young age. We should have more opportunity to go out into the world and find out who we are and what it means to be a human being before we make such a momentous decision as to what we're going to devote our life to. I'm no longer 21. I've, in 50 years, learned a lot. I wish I knew then what I know now. I'd have made a different decision at that point. But maybe I had to make that decision to come to where I am today. So the decision that I made was I would become a biochemist. And I would go to the laboratory and find the right chemical. I studied dopamine, I studied serotonin. This was in 1968, 1969. And I came to the conclusion that these chemicals by themselves have no idea what to do. Dopamine, just like the name sounds. Dope, it's stupid. The English word for stupid is dope. So I thought, well, how will the chemicals know what to do? And decided there had to be a self to help them decide what to do. Not only the neurotransmitters, but every chemical in our body needs to have some idea. When do we get up? When do we go to work? When do we get married? What do we choose for occupation? Do you think the chemicals have any idea? By themselves, they don't have a clue. It's like trying to determine what the meaning of a poem is by analyzing the ink that it's written with. As if the ink and the composition of the ink would tell you what the meaning of the words and the meaning of the paragraph in the book would be. That's how stupid, unfortunately, psychiatry has become. I am a psychiatrist, so I can be critical. I've been through full psychiatric training. I didn't come to these conclusions lightly. I've had the fortune, or perhaps misfortune, of a full psychiatric training. I went to medical school. I went to the best of residencies, Harvard University. I'm board certified. I practice still as a psychiatrist. We're always practicing, you know. So I also have a PhD in biochemistry. I don't criticize these chemicals lightly. I worked with them very closely. I know them very well. Furthermore, I've had my lived experience. So I've seen these problems from quite a few dimensions. As a psychiatrist, as a researcher, as a person with lived experience. I think my experience of having been labeled with schizophrenia and been through my own recovery was a much better education than the other degrees that I received. It taught me really what was most essential for recovery, which unfortunately still is rarely written about in the textbooks. We've tried through our National Empowerment Center, which I'm the director of. And here's our website, powertoyou.org. You can see we have a theme. We have a theme here, power to you, and to you, and to you. No one can give it to you, though. You have to discover your power. And it's essential to recovery because recovery is about self-determination. Recovery can't be given to you. It can't be provided to you. There's no recovery program. It's your own program. It's what you develop. People can help you along the way and assist you in the writing of your program, but they can't give it to you. Just like when I prescribe a medication, I don't say, this medicine will cure you. I say, it'll give you a little time while you work on your recovery. People hate that. They want, give me a pill. Give me an injection. Give me a program. People want to be fed. They don't want to have to change their lives. Sometimes we have to suffer to recover, perhaps always. We don't let people suffer enough. We actually are cruel sometimes because we interrupt the suffering sometimes too soon. And that leads to greater suffering. A little suffering can go a long ways. But if you interrupt it, you may suffer a lifetime. You can't medicate away the protest that our soul and our spirit is making. So, how do we get out of this? How do we as a society recover? How do we recover from the culture that says the answers are all going to be given? The answers can be consumed. We have to make a very basic change in our culture. And we have to organize. We have to come together and recognize that the solutions don't lie out there. They lie in our hands, between those of us that want to make a change, those of us that will say, that's enough. So I'll show you a few ideas that I have about changing this way of thinking, because we really have to change our way of thinking. I call this talk Heartbeats of Hope, and I have a book that I've written that Professor G and his team are working to translate. It's called, why is it called Heartbeats of Hope? A woman who heard a talk of mine, she was actually in Poland, said that hearing me speak gave her some extra heartbeats. And we need some extra heartbeats because our hearts are being squeezed tight. The life is being squeezed out of our hearts, out of our souls, by society and by culture that says we don't really have a life of our own, that we don't have our own voice, we don't have our own capacity, that we have to rely on instructions from above. Yours isn't the only culture that struggles with this. Almost every Western culture as well struggles with this. I was in Portugal, and a doctor came to several talks that I gave. This is a couple of years ago. First I had difficulty getting into Portugal because they said recovery was an American concept, so they didn't want it in Portugal. Recovery is not just an American concept. It's becoming universally understood that it can occur. And by that, I do not mean recovery from an illness, by the way, because I don't see these as medical illnesses. I see it as recovery of our humanity, recovery of our capacity to lead a full life, to be self-directed human beings who can then connect with other human beings in an equal fashion, not collectively listening to just what we're told all the time, but making up our own mind and coming to our own conclusions. So this doctor, at the end of my last talk, he stood up and he said, I worry it'll take a long time for these ideas to be accepted in Portugal. And Portugal, you know where it is? Long ways from here, other side of the world, yeah. Probably 12 hours time zones away. But these are universal issues. That's what I want to get across. They're not just issues in Korea. They're not just issues in the Far East. They're not just issues in the U.S. Every country that I visited is dealing with the same issue. And they say it's a mental health issue, but it's really a social cultural issue. The way people are located in society in all these countries is as bits of a machine, parts of a machine, not as real human beings with the capability to lead a full life. So he pointed up to the sky above him, and he said, this will take a long time. He said, we're a culture that has had our answers provided to us from above. First by the church, then by the kings and queens, then by dictators. We're used to having all the answers come from above. And that's true of all these cultures. There was a temporary period in our society, temporary, I hope it is restored, when there was some more genuine democracy where voices actually counted. We're struggling at this point to regain what was written in our own Constitution 200 years ago, that people have rights. People have inalienable rights. The right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Everyone. And freedom, as Dr. before me mentioned, freedom is a very important element in health and in recovery. So, what can we do? What can we do? We've been organizing, as Professor G had said, we've been organizing in our country for 50 years. People with lived experience have been organizing. And I didn't realize until I went to other countries, this is kind of a tradition in the United States, is to organize. When you see a problem, you get together and you try to solve it. We're not actually used to waiting for someone else to solve the problem. A good example is AA, Alcoholics Anonymous. There's a huge problem with addiction. We didn't say, let's research it, or let's wait for the government to pass a new regulation. We tried prohibition, that didn't work. You can't legislate away addiction. So people got together in self-help and created AA. Well, we need to do something like that now for mental health problems. A type of self-help and peer support that is genuine peer support, not peer support that is designed and executed by the present system. Actually, it needs to be peer support that runs a new system. We, with lived experience, we know what's most important. And they may laugh and say, oh, the inmates running the asylum, the blind leading the blind. Well, in fact, people who are blind know the very best way to lead a life if you're blind. Well, those of us that have been labeled with mental health issues, I don't like the word mental illness, mental health issues, who better than us, especially who've been through our own recovery experience, who better than us to say what we have found to be most valuable for our recovery? So yes, the blind should be leading the blind, and they do in independent living centers. And yes, people labeled with psychiatric problems, we should be leading our own recovery. So this is what we've done. And a very close friend of mine, who is the director of all the county mental health centers in the country, has recently stated, though I can't get him to put it in writing, he's recently stated that all the major changes in our mental health system in the United States in the last 20 years have been initiated and have been created by people who lived experience. We are the creators of change. No one else is going to do it for us. Providers have too much at stake in the present system to do it for us. They've been trained in schools that are 20 years behind times. Family members are of goodwill, but have mostly heard from the providers. Pharmaceutical companies certainly don't want to change the present system. They're making a lot of money. So, who's that leave? That leaves us. We have the most at stake. Those of us that have been labeled, those of us that are recovering. We are the ones that have the most at stake here. So we're the ones that have to lead this movement. Don't be afraid to be a leader, because nobody else will. It's good to have allies, people who recognize the importance of it, people who support you. But they'll be allies, they won't be leaders in the movement. Ultimately, the movement will have to be led by people who live experience. My dear friend, late Judy Chamberlain, was always very adamant about this. She allowed me into the movement. She said, we have room for 3 psychiatrists. And the others, another one was Peter Bregan. She said, 2 are named Peter and 1 is Dan. And there are 3 of you. That's out of a country of 40,000 psychiatrists, so they let 3 in. Lauren Mosher also. But Lauren Mosher, he came up with Soteria House, which was a very good alternative to a psychiatric hospital, but he always thought that he'd be accepted by other psychiatrists. He didn't realize he was never going to be accepted by other psychiatrists, because everything he did questioned what they did. He minimized medication, he maximized social interaction, he was getting people out of hospitals, he didn't label people. He was way ahead of his time. He was head of schizophrenia research at our National Institute of Mental Health in 1979. He came up with a Soteria House that was a very successful alternative to a psychiatric hospital, small home-like setting, voluntary treatment. His reward, he lost his job. He came back from Italy one time. Italy's a dangerous place to go to. You go to Italy, you might lose your job when you come back. They have some unusual ideas there. They think people can recover too. So here's what we've been doing for the last 50 years. We've come up with an alternative to the medical model we call the empowerment paradigm of recovery of life. It's not a model. We use the word paradigm because it's more a philosophy. Model implies it would be the same for everybody. Recovery is not the same for everybody. It's individualized. You can't have self-determination and then say, we have a program for everybody. Can't do that. The second program, it's really training. It's not just a program, it's a training to find people's voice. We need new leaders. I'm not going to be around forever. Turning, today's the 8th. In 2 days I turn 76. So I want to see young people come along, pick up the torch, carry it forward. And this is finding our voice training for recovery and advocacy. And I'll say a word later about that. Basically, the most important element is to take your anger, and as Mahatma Gandhi said, compress your anger, and it becomes a source of your energy. Don't suppress it, compress it, and use it in advocacy. I know 50 years ago that I was in seclusion and decided I'd become a psychiatrist. I'm still angry. I got over most of it myself, but the people still today are locked in seclusion, locked in restraints, involuntarily hospitalized, when all they did was just suffer from trauma. All they wanted was a human heart. And what did they get? A heartless hospital. Heartless medication. They just want a friendly friendly face, a helping hand. They want hope. They want to know that they can have a future. But they don't get that right now. But peers can provide that as long as peers are not misguided into thinking that they really should be junior clinicians. What has helped you in your recovery is the gold and the wisdom that you need to hold on to. Most cases you probably learned that you had to come up with your own decisions. That means you have to encourage other people to come up with their own decisions too. You can't empower them, but you can engage them in a relationship in such a way that they are able to start to make their own decisions. You can awaken in them their self and their soul and their energy and their enthusiasm. You can help inspire some of their confidence, that they can step forward, they can make friends, they can create a new world. Peer-run respite alternatives to hospitals. When I decided I didn't want to be in the laboratory, I tend to be a person that does things a little bit too extreme. So I didn't just say, oh, I think I'll retool for a new career. Instead, I just stopped what I was doing. Stopped going to work. Stopped talking for a while, one point for 5 weeks. I really needed time to think about what I was going to do. And of course, if you stop in this society where you're supposed to be running as fast as you can, you're in big danger of being apprehended. Everybody's like wondering, why are you stopping? I should have just written out a sign and said, I'm reconsidering. Or maybe I could have said, I'm on a personal retreat. I'm practicing mindfulness. Well, it hadn't been made popular yet. So when I was in seclusion, I got locked in seclusion because I was too happy. At one point, I was just too happy. I was on a pass. I came back to the pass. They said, how are you doing? And I said, on a scale of 1 to 10, I feel 11. So boom, put him in seclusion right away. Give him an injection. He's too happy. If you're ever in a psychiatric hospital, beware. Don't be too happy. They'll be suspicious. They may call it mania. They got a pathological name for every extreme state. Don't cry too long. Might be serious depression, even if you have a lot to cry about. Don't get angry. No. Never get angry. Even if they've taken away your rights, taken away your clothes, taken away your identity, taken away your hope. Don't get angry, though. Don't get angry. On the other hand, if you don't get angry, you're going to be in trouble. You might end up there a long time. So I decided while I was in seclusion, I had an idea that if I said it out loud, I probably would remain in the hospital a really long time. I decided while I was in seclusion, I'm going to become a psychiatrist. And I'm going to get the keys, and I'm going to let everybody out of the hospital. Because nobody should be locked involuntarily in a hospital. I mean, you're feeling alone, you're feeling powerless, and they lock you up, away from everyone you know and everything that's familiar. It takes a long time to recover from just even a couple of months, let alone years of that. Then they expect you when you get out, okay, go get a job, make some friends, watch your diet, find a place to live. So peer-run respites are an alternative to hospitals. Emotional CPR, that's more recent development. I said something about it yesterday. I'll say something about it again today because there are people here today that weren't here yesterday. And besides, today's a new day. I'll probably think of new things I hadn't thought about yesterday. Basically, emotional CPR is to restart your emotional heart the way CPR helps start your physical heart. But it's much more than that. It's really a way, sort of secretly, to change the culture, to shift it from a up-down, command and control culture to a collaborative, democratic culture. It's going to take a while to do that, but you have to start somewhere. These are all, by the way, these are all developed by people with lived experience, all these changes. Recovery dialogues for shifting from medical model to recovery to life paradigm. We're just trying to think of every way we can to change the culture. From maintenance and medical control to empowerment and recovery. And these dialogues are basically, they sound very simple. 20 to 30 people gathering periodically, people from different backgrounds, providers, parents, peers, activists, all gathering to talk about, well, what does recovery mean? What's empowerment mean? How can we do it together? Because we have to bring along as many people as possible. We can't just convert the converted. We can't just reach the people that already agree. We have to reach larger circles. And lastly, we have recovery learning communities. Again, these are not centers, but they are communities of recovery. And Massachusetts has 5 of these. They purposely didn't call them centers, but they reach out. They go into the community centers, into the churches, into the schools, and bring a lot of these ideas, give talks on recovery, do training in CPR, bring these ideas out. And peer support is implicit in many of these, but in order for peer support to work, we have to do a lot of these other activities. Because you can't just hire a peer to work in a system that has the old culture. That's brutal. So what is recovery? What is recovery? Well, this is a couple of ideas about it. As I say, it's not a medical condition. It's and sometimes it's important to look at another language. In Spanish, we first were looking at recovery, and they said recuperación, which is recuperation. I said, that sounds like a broken arm. They said, yeah, that's what happens with a broken arm. Well, a broken life is not like a broken arm. It's really a lot more involved than a broken arm. So they came up with recover a life. That's where that came from. It was in translation. And actually, last time I was here in 2006. In Korea, we came up with recovery of humanity. That recovery is recovery of one's humanity. So recovery means I'm a full participant in the community. I run my own life. That's very, very important. The major decisions in your life are in your hands, not in somebody else's hands. It means I no longer think of myself or I'm seen as mentally ill, and instead think of myself as a worker, a parent, a student, a neighbor, a friend, an artist, a tenant, lover, a citizen. Normalize your life and get away from I'm a bipolar person, or I'm a schizophrenic, or I'm a mentally ill person. When you're not sure of who you are, those labels can be hard to get rid of. Recovery means I rely mostly on personal and social supports outside of the mental health system. We don't want to try to reproduce people's social life with a social worker and a peer support worker. Peers should be transitional. Peers should just enable you to make friends. They can't be your only friend. They can be friendly, but they can't take the place of having friends and having family and having neighbors. Recovery also means that I adapt to stress in life and use them as growth opportunities and live life on life's terms. What's called symptoms really are cries for help. And often what's called a symptom is the first sign of help. Recovery often begins with what the medical community considers an illness. I'll give you an example just from my own life. I went and stopped, and that was a sign of health, because I was stopping living a toxic life. I was stopping living the belief that I and everyone else is a machine. I stopped. But that was considered from the outside a symptom of an illness. So it had to be removed. I had to be kick-started. Get that boy back there. Get him back in the game. Inject him. Give him pills. Do something. Make him go to work. What's he doing just sitting there? Doesn't he know? Everyone has to be busy. It really was saved my life, though. If I hadn't stopped, I believe I'd be dead a long time ago, as I was losing all interest in life. Well, this would probably take a whole lecture to explain. There is actually in Korean, though, something called PACE that we developed, and I'll try to make sure it's up on our website. Where is it? The person who translated it. Someone here knows where it is, what website it's on? Yes. You want to tell people what the website is? Come on, stand up and tell them where they can find it. Yeah. Yeah, you all have to stop being shy, by the way. You know, you just have to say it. Get up and do it. There we go. Yeah. Thank you for translating them. I'll just give you a brief example of what this paradigm tries to say in a drawing. So you look over on the right, and you see, imagine a spiral actually coming out at you, and we call it the spiral of development of one's real self. So if everything goes well and you walk at a certain time, you talk at a certain time, you go to school at a certain time, you make friends, you're actually able to develop into a whole self and run your own life. And we don't know a lot about how that happens, actually. We just know when problems happen. And problems can occur with trauma and loss. And that can cause severe distress. So then you enter this center cycle here, and we call it the cycle of healing. And you still have opportunities with friendship, with peer support, with holistic health, with therapy, with emotional CPR, trauma-informed care, to return to the cycle of development. However, if you have severe distress and you lack the necessary supports, maybe your family doesn't have enough money for you to spend a period not working. Maybe you can't get a job because of severe distress. Maybe you lose your housing. Anyway, one of these lack of support can lead to a loss of a major social role. So you might have to drop out as a student if you're in school. You might have to you might lose a job if you're a worker. You might not be able to parent your children if you're a mother. Not that a worker couldn't be a mother, by the way. But it can be a major role to be a parent. If you can't fulfill that role, you're excluded from society and labeled mentally ill. It's a social description. It's not there's not a medical condition here. And then you really need to experience empowerment. You need to experience finding your voice, to step back into even your healing. So everybody has periods of healing, but not everybody has periods of being labeled mentally ill. There is a difference. And the recovery, we say this is the cycle of recovery. It's recovery of your life in the community. And healing is healing from trauma. There'll be a question and answer period later in the day. You can ask questions about this. This is going to be a quick tour of several years of work. Judy Chamberlain and I came up with this description of empowerment, and we call it the 12 P's of empowerment. 12 P's of empowerment. And empowerment often begins with peers, among peers, whether they're the peers are people that are labeled, or maybe they're peers of your high school students, or peers in college, or peers at your job, people who you feel are soulmates, people who you can connect with, people you can share with. Very important, because that's how you find out you have a future. That's how you think about the future, and that's how you think about recovery as well. And as I said earlier, you start, and these are like consciousness-raising groups. Women have gone through them, people with other disabilities have gone through them. Raising your consciousness to the fact that you've been oppressed, that you've been disempowered, that society has taken away your voice, taken away your rights. And that makes you angry. You might not even realize you're angry until you realize how much you lost and how much you've been taken away from. And that anger, though, you need to transform it into passion, or else when you go before the legislature or the parliament or before newspapers, TV, any place in the public, if you haven't found a way to utilize your anger, they'll just say, you're a madman. It's not accidental. The word mad, at least in English, means both angry and crazy. Yeah, we're crazy with anger. Unexpressed anger. Unfulfilled anger. Well, once you are able to make that transformation, then you can start finding meaning and purpose and start planning, set up goals for yourself. It's hard if you skip this step about transforming your anger, you probably won't find a way to identify your goals. There'll be someone else's goals until you this is really where you grab control of your life, where you use your anger to assert yourself. That's when you really grab control of your own decision-making, your own self-determination. Self-determination may mean that you have to express your anger, because other people may not want you to express yourself. Teenagers often appear angry. Well, they're just trying to express their autonomy. And then you can enter into politics, gain a presence, present yourself, persuade other people. I stopped at 12. We could have had more P's. I want to say a word about peer-run respites, and then a word about emotional CPR for the people that didn't get to hear about it yesterday. And actually they go together, respites and emotional CPR. We're encouraging peers to help other peers, but we aren't giving any ideas about how they can do that. In fact, we're kind of interfering with what peers know to do best by training them in traditional counseling. Traditional counseling is pretty lousy at helping people, especially in crisis. I'm not sure really how many people it helps, to be honest, because I think everyone needs to grasp control of their life, not just people that are labeled. So peer-run respite is a crisis alternative to a hospital, and its intention is to divert hospitalization. They're staffed and operated by peers, to have professional training. Now, I don't like that word professional right there. This is somebody else's slide. I would say just to have training, hopefully by peers actually, in providing crisis support, build mutual and trusting relationships. Peer-run respites are usually located in a house or in a residential neighborhood, a safe, home-like environment for people to overcome crisis. Instead of a scary institution where lots of people all herded together, usually only 3 or 4 people, each having your own bedroom. And it still costs less than a hospital, 1/3 the cost of a hospital. There should be one on every corner, my God. A city the size of Seoul should probably have 30 or 40 of them. We have 30 in the U.S. right now in the whole country. 330 million people, we got 30. That's 1 for every 10 million people. And only 3 or 4 beds in each one. And we're trying. Some states have a wealth of them. Small state of New Hampshire has 1 million residents and has 4 peer-run respites. State of Texas, 25 million people, 0 respites. So you have like, what, 50 million people here? Yeah, 1/6. You should at least start with 5. I'd say, let's get 5 going. We'll work on 5 in Korea. We'll help you too. Now we have manuals, we got research, we got procedures, we got all the ideas, supports. We can help. It's not an Airbnb. Although one person has recently recommended using Uber with emotional CPR. Yeah. Emotional CPR on call. I need a crisis person. I need a peer. Okay, we'll send one over. I'm not going to go through all the way to sell it. They're in your book. How to sell people on it. Okay. And here's something. This is new. You can go to our website and see there is research evidence that peer support reduces the incidence of hospitalization. Okay, here's a quick run through emotional CPR. 5 minutes. It said 5 minutes, right? Do I get 10 minutes? Okay. You just gave me 5 more minutes? Okay. Nice to have friends in a high place. Okay, so we have, first of all, in order for emotional CPR to make sense, you have to have a different idea of what emotional distress is. Because if you think emotional distress is a chemical imbalance, then of course you just take a pill and change the balance. But we've already argued against the chemical imbalance theory. But so we have a social theory that emotional distress is due to trauma and loss. So instead of being connected, heart to heart, mind to mind, people get isolated, and that means going from dialogue to monologue, going into your own world. You have this expression here, somebody's crazy, do you go like that? Yeah, you go like that? Yeah, he's crazy. Well, it's interesting. It's like your thoughts just go round and round. Yeah, because you don't have anyone else to interrupt the sequence. If we never had contact with other people, we'd just be everybody in their own world. And guess what? That's happening. That's sort of the default position of our nervous system and our bodies, is just to take care of ourselves. And if we don't have contact with other people, we get more and more frightened, and then we circle in upon ourselves. Very dangerous. So that's broken heart, trapped in monologue, but emotional CPR will help you back through connecting with other people, through experiencing empowerment by experiencing your passion and purpose, and then you can gain a sense of being alive again. We have a trainer, she was from originally in Poland, now lives in Scotland, and she said that emotional CPR really gave her back her life, made her feel that life was worth living again. Kind of startled me when I heard that, but that is literally what revitalization means, because vitality comes from the Latin or some Western world for life, vita. So we're bringing life back. We're bringing life back. It's not just recovery, because recovery is just mainly for people who've been labeled mentally ill. So many ways that we communicate, and each one of them is trying to contribute to what we're trying to say. And unless we have all our channels open, and our hearts open, and our souls open, we're going to miss a lot of them. Unfortunately, by the way, we men are at a disadvantage. We think words are the story. And you know what? There are probably only about 10 or 15% of communication is in the actual words. Yeah. There's a movie out, Hitch. I don't know if people have seen it. Will Smith, and he's telling a younger guy how he can be more successful in dating. And he said, first of all, recognize that the verbal part of communication is only 10%. 90% is nonverbal. 90% is on the emotional realm. Women know that. Men, we're not taught that. We think, you know, typical story in a relationship, maybe the wife might say, the husband, did you hear what I said? The husband said, I heard every word. I can repeat every word to you. The wife said, you didn't hear what I said, did you? Now what she's really saying in a way was, did you feel what I said? Not what, did you hear it? I sometimes recommend it to men, just try to feel what a woman is saying. Don't sit there and repeat the words. Never be another day. ECPR actually would probably be a good dating preparation, especially for men. Yeah. Or women who would like to have more dates. Or women who would, I mean, you don't always, it isn't always men going out with women. I don't want to raise the whole issue of LGBTQI. There are many letters. Both my daughters are very open with us and with the world that they have described themselves as queer. And it's an interesting learning experience for my wife and I, what that means. When I was growing up, queer was a very derogatory term. But my younger daughter, who probably should have been a lawyer, she said to me that I should know what queer means, because I raised them to look beyond labels. And I was like, I didn't necessarily mean every label. But she said, well, it's looking beyond the label of male and female to the human being. And looking beyond what do they call it? Heteronormal. Looking beyond that and seeing there's value in other combinations between people. So I'll finish with what I call the 6 intentions. These are not instructions, and you can't repeat them word for word. If you're with somebody who's in crisis, try not to repeat them. That'll only make people angrier. Don't read them to somebody. Just take them into your own heart and be able to feel them, so that when you're with somebody, you just can be with them in a different way. This isn't a toolkit. This isn't a set of skills. We do this training, 20 people for 2 days. We're going to try to find ways to have a shorter version for people that don't have 2 days. We're going to try to find a way to do some of it online for people that can't come in person. But I'm not thrilled about the online idea, because you really need to hear the voice, see the face of a person, sense their closeness or their distance. But if it's that or nothing, maybe we'll start with online. Also just because I'm 12,000 miles away. We do have some trainers in Singapore. I was talking to Professor G about that, and in Australia. And granted, that's not like right next door. That's a lot closer. So the first intention is I will connect through feelings first. Just pause for a moment on that one. That means you're with somebody, they're in distress. Don't start asking them questions right away. Just try to sit with them and sit with their feelings, uncomfortable as they may be. Somebody's crying, or maybe harder yet, they're yelling. You may think they're yelling at you. Maybe they're just yelling. Absorb it. Wait for a little bit. Stay in contact though. Stay connected. Your eyes, your ears, and your heart, and be respectful. But connect on the feeling level first. Don't try to track down, and then what happened, and then where were you, and what happened after that. That's all up here. We're trying to help people to feel comfortable expressing what's in the rest of their body. I go here, but it's really their arms, their legs, their back. It's all parts of your body. Secondly, I will feel your presence. I'm with you, and I'll feel your presence. I'll stay with you, but I'll also share some of my feelings in response to you. It may not be the same feeling, although often when you're with somebody that's very sad, you may feel some of their sadness. It's okay to say, you know, I'm feeling kind of sad for what you're describing. Not you made me sad. Not that I know that you're sad. I'm just feeling kind of sad right at this moment. And then stop right there. Don't elaborate on it because I had a similar experience. It's okay to share some of your experience, but mostly we're saying share the feeling that you're going through. And number 3 is very, very important. Be, don't do. Just try to be with the person. Don't try to fix them. Don't try to make recommendations. Don't tell them, you know, I've got a great idea for what's wrong with you. Don't explain them. Just be there with them. Say, I'm going to stick with you. And this, try to listen in the fashion of chunk. 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 Don't need a translation of that. Chunk. One word at a time. Maybe next time I'll have a couple more. You know. So this is a very amazing thing that the Chinese character for listen has the ears, the eyes, the heart, 10 eyes in fact, and respect. The fourth intention really goes with the third, which is I'm not sure what's best for you. I'm not going to try to fix you, and I'm not sure what's best for you. But I'm not leaving you. I'm sticking with you. I'm staying here, and we're going to explore the unknown together. And I had a terrific therapist, actually. I remember I would say to him something like, I don't know. He one time said, I said to him one time, I'm really worried that if I get into my feelings that I won't be as productive as I had been before. Because, you know, if you suppress your feelings, you can turn out a lot of work. Of course, it may be terrible work. But he said, don't worry. You'll always have that drive. It'll always be there with you, so you can explore your emotions. And I said, oh, that was so great of you to say that and to recognize that. And he said, you came up with it. it was from you. He always pointed out that insights that we came up with together usually was something that I've been working towards. And that made me feel so good. Oh, I played a role in that. It wasn't just you're giving me an insight. The fifth one is really related to that too. Together, 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 together. Try to be together with somebody. When they're in crisis, they feel alone. They feel powerless and they feel alone. And you can't empower them, but you can be with them in such a fashion that they can experience their power. Be humble. Don't be a know-it-all. Don't come in as an expert. They can experience their own power, and they can feel that you're there with them. It's hard for someone to feel that somebody's with them if you're just giving them orders and giving them instructions. So, together, we'll release the power to heal that lies within us. And you gain power too in being with someone in a fashion. And lastly, we actually create new life, new voice, with a capital V, that's a deeper voice, the voice of your whole being, and new hope in the present moment, which is revitalizing. Very important that it be in the present moment. And we actually can, I believe, and I've seen it and felt it, and that woman from Poland expressed it, actually can create new life for both people. Both the person who started out assisting and the person who started out in distress can both experience new life and new hope that wasn't there before, and new energy. So you can get energy from it. I feel that way when I come and I share with people, you know, in different countries. It's, at my stage of life, it's not that easy to travel, you know, halfway around the world. But I feel so encouraged by being with you all. I feel so excited by your enthusiasm, by your eagerness to learn and to take control of your own lives and change your society. Doesn't feel like a big deal to me. I feel encouraged, I feel energy. I'm very grateful Professor G came and found me. So thank you. Thank you all very much.